I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is anomalies and curiosities of dinnerware. And I'm going to, after I start my PowerPoint presentation, I'm going to even get rid of my video so I'm not a little talking head at you while I follow my notes so I get dates right and places and everything. But anyway, I think I wrote to you about what an anomaly was. So it's something that's an oddity or something out of the normal, but it also can be a rarity. So it can be something exquisitely beautiful. So all of that counts as an anomaly, and you all know what a curiosity is. Without further ado, anomalies and curiosities of dinnerware. So basically, my own definition, I've just explained what an anomaly and curiosity is, but dinnerware for me, and if you know me, this is true, is almost anything that can go on a table. So it's like tabletop, whatever. So that can include no limits, really. I mean, you can put in the chat if you've got a limit for me, but I don't think so. So that includes, in this case, this is an ad for Pellegrino from a few years ago. And so in this case, it would include this either greasy napkin or maybe it's a piece of wax paper. I can't really tell. But that would be included in the dinnerware in this photograph or this advertisement. So this also includes ashtrays, which I just want to give you a heads up that in about 2026, I've been waiting for this for 12 years, but I want to do a big ashtray show, a show about smoking, and not a negative, well, it is a negative thing because both of my parents died of smoking related things, but so I'm militant non-smoking. However, ashtrays have been around for a long time and they were really beautiful in their heyday. And there's some really interesting ones here. So the ones you're looking at right now are some they're plastic and they were designed by Kay Lemoyne, some of my favorites, and he's about my favorite plastic designer. And then this one I'm throwing in, and the designer Daniel Mellman donated this one to the museum a few years ago. And if you come to Kingston and you come to my office, I'll get it out and show it to you. But anyway, here's the back of the ashtray. Okay, it was made for the pediatrician's office. And I guess you could say, well, maybe that's not on the table, but it would be in their office on a little table that someone might be eating something off of. But it was sponsored by Similac, which is a baby formula company. And it proudly declares all of that on here. But the actual ashtray, you can stub out your cigarette in the baby's footprint that's either 1 week old, 2 years, or 1 year old. You can take your choice. So it's kind of a novelty ashtray. But anyway, so that will for sure be in the exhibit coming up. However, we're going to move on to something a bit more, what's the word, distinguished here. So we're looking right now at chronologically beginning our look, and I'm kind of going to go chronologically until I get into some tangent and veer off in some other direction, and I think you'll follow this along. So the French Sèvres factory was founded in 1738. First, it was a royal and then an imperial factory. And you might be familiar with their exquisite porcelains like the one you're looking at right here at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. They were cherished possessions of kings and queens. And this is the Etruscan style bowl that is hard paste porcelain manufactured in 1787 for this place, the Queen's Dairy at Rambouillet, the Latterie de Rambouillet, 1787, excuse me, I'm getting my centuries here, 1787. And you need to know, in case you've heard about the Queen's Dairy, you might be thinking of this one, which was at Versailles, or it is at Versailles, 1783. So they're both from the 1780s. They're both designed by the Queen's favorite architect, Richard Meek, inspired by the ideals of Rousseau, and both extolled the fashionable virtues of the aristocracy of the time. This is returning to nature in a playful way. Louis XVI surprised his wife, Marie Antoinette, with the gift of the dairy. That's this dairy. He was not being altruistic. He wanted to keep his queen happy and occupied while he went hunting. So he ordered 65 pieces of Sèvres Etruscan-style porcelain, and they were delivered to Rambouillet in 2 shipments in 1787 and 1788. And included among those objects is this piece. It's a special Sèvres bowl referred to as the bowl sen or breast cup. It's 5¼ inches in diameter and about 5 inches high. It's also referred to, and I'm going to butcher some French here, as a Jacques Tétin, and it was created by Jean-Jacques Lagraine Lejeune and Louis-Simon Boison. And there were a set of 4 of these. I think we have another image in the whole set. So 4 of these. And these breast cups were meant to be used to drink milk from. So 2 of them are now at the Musée National de Céramique, Sèvres, and the 3rd is in Naples. They're said to have been molded from the Queen's own breast. That seems like a far stretch, but it makes a really great story. The breast is flesh colored, which you can see with a pink nipple at the bottom. And these are, this is a time when these were created, they were really loving everything that was Greek and Roman. So this is based on the Greek style with goat's head and hoof feet, and all things Greek and Roman were popular. So this is a Greek mastos cup, and mastos comes from the word that means bread or udder, and it's molded on a breast. And also at the same time, the Greco-Roman goat-headed pots were popular, Etruscan-handled vases, and tureens with cow feet. And so you can learn a lot more about this if you look at a book which has a really great title called Dairy Queens, which is the politics of pastoral architecture from Catherine de' Medici to Marie Antoinette, and it's by Meredith Martin. So following on this theme for just a moment, in 2008, so a few years have passed, Dom Perignon was updating its shape, or Karl Lagerfeld actually was updating the shape for Dom Perignon and created this breast, supposedly from the model Claudia Schiffer. They tell the legend that Marie Antoinette not only drank fresh milk from her Bolsen, but also champagne. And so that's how they're justifying doing this. Lagerfeld updated the plinth to that of stylized bottles and a sleeker, more angular line. And they made 1,000 of these, but it was not released in the United States due to legalities having to do with relating alcohol to sex. And then in 2009 and 10, a young designer named Antoine Baudin created the Seine coffee or tea set during her residency at the Sèvres factory. Her service Seine, breast or wind-blown sail is the meaning of that, referred to the bosom bowl of Marie Antoinette. She alters the name Seine, whose name is the provincial word for both bosom and the swollen part of a sail being puffed out by the wind. All the pieces were fired upside down on their unglazed edges. And continuing this trend, it gets a little crazier now. In 2011, the corset maker Hubert Barrère designed a dress for Maison Parisienne using Sèvres porcelain, which has been described as being inspired by the culture of the 14th and 15th centuries, yet echoing Marie Antoinette's bowl Seine. The dress is referred to as La Vierge de Sèvres. And here's a few details. I can go back and forth here. It's a reinterpretation of the painting of the Virgin of Meun, circa 1450 by Jean Fouquet. And apparently in the early 19th century, Josephine Bonaparte, who it was Napoleon's bride, commissioned Sèvres to create an updated version of the bowl Seine using the original molds. And a few years ago, if you wanted one, this is what you could pay for it. Supposedly they were reissued annually. And then bringing this whole breast cup idea to the present, this is a piece that was created by Suzanne Wolf for our exhibition Entomophagous Dining, which was either dining on or with insects, which was in 2023. And here's the interior of her Suzanne Wolf's piece. Really lovely. Exterior, interior. So without leaving this topic too quickly, this is a Rosenthal late 19th century picture. It has a Rosenthal back stamp on it where the China painter incorporated the shape of the vessel into the hand-painted female form. So check out it's on my right, so I think it might be on your right. Ironically, the anonymous China painter was likely a woman, and it's in the collection in Ypsilanti, Michigan. And then during more than its 250 years, the British company Wedgwood created ceramics in practically every genre known to mankind. They're best known for Queensware and Jasperware, but other, readily recognizable wares that are unique on their own were very popular and successful. Queens and Czars commissioned dinnerware back as early as the 18th century and had more than 1,000 pieces in each of the individualized sets. One example, and this may be my favorite one, look at the top of the plate, it has a little frog on it. So this is the Queensware frog service created between 1773 and 74 at Wedgwood, commissioned by Catherine the Great, Empress of Russia from 1762 to 1796. This one set, there were 1,244 different hand-painted views of the British Isles, decorating 952 dinnerware pieces. But actually, this doesn't tell the story about my love affair with Wedgwood. And that began when I discovered this caneware. So it's Wedgwood caneware, and it's these are on the top left is our game pie dishes. And there's actually more down with a kind of pie shape, and then the conceit up on the upper right corner. They were created beginning in 1795 when there was a flour shortage in England during the time of the Napoleonic Wars. The pastry-looking dishes with clever cauliflower or rabbit finials were a genius of an idea by Wedgwood. This is Josiah Wedgwood. For the English people who believed their table still needed to look like it had pastries, even when none were to be had because of the flour shortage. So here's one of the ones that's in the collection of our museum, the International Museum of Dinnerware Design, from around 1800. And here's, if I take the lid off, inside is a ceramic liner where you could put your stew with vegetables and partridges or whatever, you have pheasants, whatever in it, and it would have no flour in it whatsoever, yet it looked like you had one. And then I also about swooned when I heard about these. They're called conceits, and they're also made of caneware. And to me, they look like lady fingers that are on end with Wedgwood kind of jasperware icing in between them. Unlike the game pie dish, these have no function whatsoever. The lids don't come off, so you can't put anything in it. Anyway, the lids can't come off. So what you see here is a little cake that's going to be on your table known as a conceit. And then here's something I want you to play a little guessing game, and you can put your answer in the chat if you want to. So this is around 1800 too. It's a cylindrical piece. What is it? If it was from around 1800, and one sold at Christie's, I don't think this is much help, in 1998 for more than $2,000. If I give you another hint, that would be opening it and letting you see the interior. And this one is from the Birmingham Museum of Art. And we borrowed this a few years ago for an exhibition. So can you guess what it is? Oops, I guess I have to tell you. It's an egg beater. So if you put in the chat that it's an egg beater, you win a prize that we don't know what that is yet. Okay. So who else had game pie dishes besides Wedgwood? Well, right now we're looking at one that Minton made in the 1800s. So I'm going to bounce over to a covered casserole idea. And this one is by Val Cushing, late Val Cushing. And it's one of my favorite Tureens sets. So this goes along with the oddities and curiosities and anomalies can include really beautiful things also. It's in the collection of the Ceramics Museum at Alfred. And then there are some soup tureens that might bypass good taste, but I still adore. This is from the mice and snowball service that was created between 1815 and 1860. And here's a couple of other pieces that went with that, along with the detail of this very kind of fussy design, but still lovely set. And then another game pie dish concept is this one, and this is from Minton, and it's a 19th century boar's head tureen, 1865. And here's a really outrageous piece that Wedgwood came up with, a covered dish, and I'm not quite sure if you're serving a swan or a duck or something in it. And then stopping this concept briefly with Mackenzie Childs, who came up with this idea for a soup tureen in probably the 1990s. This piece, I thought it's from Meissen, and I thought it was a soup dish, but it turns out it's a butter dish made for the table of Augustus the Strong and dates to the 1730s. I wonder what the rest of the dishes look like if this I thought was a soup tureen and it's actually a butter dish. And then Minton made this clever teapot in the shape of a turtle, because we haven't quite gotten rid of the turtle idea. And then when it comes to anomalies and curiosities of dinnerware involving both turtles and soup, the strangest one I think is in our collection here in Kingston. And that is this Haviland Limoges turtle soup bowl that dates to the 1870s. And to you, you think, oh, that's some gilt-edged, flowery little Haviland piece. But if we look at this really closely, and we illuminate it like it was a lithophane, we illuminate it from underneath so you can see the corner of the piece. Look back at this piece and you can see that head over on the right there. Here's what it looks like illuminated. There's the turtle's head, the turtle's tail at the other end, the turtle's little feet when it's illuminated. Okay, you can't see it otherwise. And that brings us to the topic of lithophanes. Lithophanes are three-dimensional translucent porcelain plaques which have to be backlit to reveal the detailed magical images. So here we've got a globe from the 1800s where it's lit and not lit. It's the same piece, but it looks like bumpy white porcelain until you backlight it, and then you can see the image almost like a photograph or a mezzotint. And then going on with lithophanes for just a minute, but to do with dinnerware, is in the 19th century, German beer steins quite often had lithophanes in the bottom of them. And here is a late 19th century piece with a bar scene inside the bottom. So after you've drained the beer out of the piece, you will see the lithophane in the bottom. The same with this one. This is one of those character mugs, and this one is obviously a nun. The interior lithophane, one of my favorites, is the priest fox choking a little choir bunny, which is from the story of Reineke Fuchs or Reynard the Fox. And here's another lithophane. This one's in the bottom of the beer stein, but one that's not in a beer stein, but is also a lithophane illuminated, showing the same image of Reynard the Fox. It's a Goethe thing. And then continuing on to a couple of contemporary makers. This is Katie Parker and Guy Michael Davis, created around 2012. When they went to Jingdezhen, they made these porcelain cylinder tumblers, and they had brought with them some lithophanes they had made of monkeys and Chairman Mao, which ended up in the tumbler bottoms in China. And something else that I really liked that I think fits my anomalies and curiosities of dinnerware is this rat snack set, which in 2014 that Katie Parker and Guy Michael Davis made for an exhibition we did, which had to do with snack sets, and there you go. So one of my favorite things. It's in our permanent collection, and there were two of them, and someone else owns one, and I don't ever remember who that is now. So following along the same line here is maybe 150 years after lithophanes came out in the 1820s, there was another kind of lithophane-like or lithophane-ish dinnerware prototype created by Ted Rada, who was a designer at Corning Incorporated. He designed this photosensitive glass plate prototype that's both beautiful and versatile. It never went into production because it wasn't cost effective, not because it wasn't a good idea. But this, if I show you a couple of images, you'll see what a great idea this really was. So it's the same plate. There's only one of them. I don't think even the Corning Museum of Glass has one of these, but we do. And so you would never have to buy new dishes. You would just change your tablecloth or your placemats, because whenever you changed it, the plate would look completely different based on what the background is. So I think that's a real genius idea. So following along here, I'm going to mention Howard Kotler just in passing here, and that's because plates are a big thing about dining, and some plates were the blanks were taken by artists and something different happened with them. And this is the case of Howard Cotler, who, if you're interested in this topic, Judy Schwartz did a fantastic Zoom for us last year about Howard Cotler that you'll want to watch. And they're all at our website at dinnerwaremuseum.org. So I can't fully go into Howard Cotler, but he's best known for his multiple series of decal plates that rejected traditional studio ceramic practices that emphasized and valued handmade objects. He's best known for work that focuses on mass-produced, store-bought plates and commercial decals, which he combined to create images that look like they embrace popular culture, but they actually contain coded images, wordplay, and rather biting humor. So Judy said, I think I'm quoting this right, in a 1995 article in Ceramic Art and Perception, in Twins, the item on the bottom left there, Cotler uses the famous Blue Boy and Pinky images, but note that both the figures have Blue Boy's head, which is a nod to gay issues. And then in his Silent White Majority and American Minstrels, Grant Wood, and another one, this iteration of Grant Wood's sister and his dentist, they stand kind of slumped shoulder to slump shoulder, dentist married to dentist. And then his Peace March from 1967. And then in an early exhibit we borrowed from Paul Cutula project, I guess it was in 2013, some of the Lost Supper images. So these are from that series. And I think people that attended that exhibit, if they weren't paying attention, didn't quite understand how kind of irreverent these pieces actually were. But there are other contemporary artists who take dinnerware plates or blanks and begin with the plate format and then surprise us with their genius approach to it. That would include Paul Scott in the UK, who he should actually do one of our Zoom talks, I think, who works with familiar English transferware and then transformed it into unpredictable and unforgettable ways. Finnish artist Carolyn Slotty used something completely different with her reworking of secondhand objects. Her manipulation of found materials creates a tension between the recognizable and the enigmatic, and the ordinary and the unexpected. And related to this work is the work of Michelle Taylor, which is in our permanent collection, who deconstructs common English dinnerware, such as these pieces, and then embroiders the original pattern back onto the plate or cup. So one of her references in these works is the demise of the British dinnerware industry. And anymore, we have none in this country either, so it's not just the British industry. And then sometimes artists use familiar dishes, teacups, bowls, and plates, and they create something playful or beautiful. This teacup bra was created to benefit breast cancer research. And this is a Li Xiaofeng, Memories of Beijing, where he's using the broken china pieces. It was in an exhibit a few years ago at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Moving right along, according to his own autobiography, French ceramist Bernard Palissy, who lived from 1510 to 1589, he spent 16 years of his life trying futilely to discover the secret of Chinese porcelain. He's now famous for having used the oval platter as his canvas, inventing a rustic type of pottery in the 16th century, decorated with cast reliefs mimicking wildlife from his youth, reptiles, ferns, flowers, and fish. His other explorations regarding fossils and their origins have now been proven correct. And then this piece by Picasso from 1955, this would be our logo for the museum if we were lucky enough to own it. It's one of my all-time favorite pieces, and I think you have to go to Paris probably to see it. So it's a still life. And regarding the plate as something not to cut a steak on, which is what we're talking about right now, one more example of humor. This is English Sunderland luster. This example was an inverted or topsy-turvy image of a courtship, and then you flip the plate over, and you have matrimony. And this has been mimicked many times over. It's not an unusual theme. So here we have courtship, and then we flip the plate over, and there's matrimony. There's another aspect of dinnerware that allows function, but with a caveat. we're going to move right on to that one. It falls under my heading of Anomalies and Curiosities. You can eat off of it, and many people have, and some still do, but I don't really encourage you to eat off of the orangey red color of this Fiesta. So the original orange Fiesta ware is very radioactive and might be considered, I would have to put a caveat here, might be hazardous to your health, especially when combined with acidic foods. The brilliant glaze is uranium and it's radioactive. I have a Geiger counter. You come to my office and I'll show it to you. And this glaze hasn't been used since 1942. The color was one of the original colors in 1936 when Frederick Curtin Reed designed it for Fiesta. And I would have to, for Homer Laughlin, and I would have to say there were lots of other companies already, manufacturers already using uranium glazes before Fiesta ware came out. So why was it discontinued in 1942, the orange color? And that's because the uranium was needed for the atom bomb. So how about then, oh, there's a whole set of it. I've frequently told people that just give me the radioactive ones and keep the other colors, which are harmless, but I usually get it otherwise. So what about uranium glass? So if I use the Geiger counter once again, it does fluoresce beautifully under a black light, like you see here, the beverage set, or the cake plate, or even the ashtray, kind of a double whammy here. But it's not nearly as radioactive or doesn't register as such on with the Geiger counter. It is radioactive though. Okay, so what is the kind of opposite of this? And this would be radioactive dinnerware that measures radioactivity. So that's what you're looking at here by Niels Ferber. He designed this set in 2011 as a result of what do you call it? Because of the Fukushima disaster. And so he's a German designer, and his set measures radioactivity. And basically, it allows you to set a meter on your plate, which lets you set the level of radioactivity that you are okay with while you're dining. So I guess the more rings that light up, the more radioactive your food is. So you get to make the decision there. The banding and meter can be removed so the plate can go in your dishwasher. And I would have to tell you that this is a design and is not available at Target store. I don't know if it didn't work or nobody wanted to pay for it, or they thought the idea of you deciding how radioactive you would allow your food to be was a good thing or a bad thing. But so we're going to move on. We're on Japan right now. So we're going to talk about Kataoji Rozanjin. And we can't skip over him by any means. So he was an eccentric, and that is an understatement. He was offered the status of National Living Treasure in Japan, but turned it down because he wasn't the first to be offered that honor. He was a famous epicure. He basically mastered creating the ware from Japan's most famous kilns because he wanted the most aesthetically appropriate dishes from which to eat his own culinary creations. He had a show at MoMA in 1954, and he visited Rome, Paris, and Alfred, New York during his only trip outside of Japan. His work looks simple enough, but the full beauty is revealed when the piece is wet, and that is when the food is served on it. Rozanjin. Which brings us to getting wet here again. So here's your George E. Orr puzzle mug. He created this favorite anomaly, and he's referred to as the Mad Potter of Biloxi, but that's another story we aren't going into. So it looks very functional, but it actually dribbles as you drink unless you know the secret of how to drink from it without that happening. And I remember trying this one with Bob Turner at a drinking fountain in Alfred in the early 1990s. He had donated this mug to the museum. So I'm changing the topic here over to cake and cake stands. So one of my favorite artists is Klaus Oldenburg, and no, we don't own this. He died in 2022 at the age of 93, and he was a sculptor known for his public art installations that featured very large replicas of everyday objects. Another theme of his is soft sculpture of everyday objects, which is what this piece of cake is. So this is called canvas cake or floor cake from 1962. It's 58 3/8 inches by 9 feet, 6 1/4 by 58 3/8. It's at the Museum of Modern Art. And I can't really legally include this in my Anomalies and Curiosities of Dinnerware because it doesn't have a cake plate under it. However, he did create, if I can move forward here, he did create these cast plaster wedding cakes for a curator's wedding in 1966. He created 8 cakes with 18 slices each. And I haven't followed this closely, but in 2012, one slice of this cake sold for $8,125 without the plate under it. So let's take another picture of Klaus Oldenburg here with all his cakes at the wedding reception, it looks like. Great photo. And then move on to Dirk Stotschke. This is one of my favorite anomalous dinnerware items. And this was a few years ago in 2012 in Seattle area when Ansika was there at the Bellevue, Art Museum. This is a confectionery facade, which I literally drooled all over. It's 8 feet tall. And there's a side view of it and a few inches wide. And there's the back of it. So you can see how he made it so he could move it and around. So once again, the front view, the side view, and the back view. And along the same lines, somebody else owns it, by the way, because I drooled all over it, but somebody else had the money to purchase it, not me. But Let Them Eat Cake, another piece by Dirk Stotschke. And then this piece is in the International Museum of Dinnerware Design. It's a still life, and it's life size by Dirk, and it's from 2020. Another piece that I would really wish was in our collection is this place setting and sets of dishes, and it's actually a whole sculpture. This was by Robert Arneson, and it's called Smorgy Bob the Cook in 1971. It was his first major sculpture that included his self-portrait, so that's a significant thing. It now resides at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. And then for the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, or APEC, in 2014, a Beijing company produced over-the-top imperial yellow dinnerware for the illustrious world leaders to use. So let's go back and see how many of those people you recognize, how many of them are still leaders here. So the cost came to about $6,000 a place setting, and each place setting had 68 pieces in it. And then there was a more modest set that the spouses of the leaders got to take home with them, and that's this set. And then remembering Marie Antoinette's Sèvres breast cup we looked at earlier when Louis XVI wanted his queen to be happy playing dairymaid at Rambouillet. The Louis before him, Louis XV, had a mistress named Madame de Pompadour. She was a major patron of Sèvres also. There was even a porcelain decorator color referred to as Pompadour pink or rose pompadour because she liked it so much, and that's the color you're looking at here. Popular at the time, around 1759, were milk goblets. Drinking fresh milk was a novelty at this time, and in a similar spirit is this 21-piece set, Limoges porcelain tea set designed by the artist. I think you recognize the artist, Cindy Sherman, who's actually a photographer. This was created in 1990 and is now in the collection of the Ceramics Museum in Alfred. And here's a detail, a close-up of Cindy Sherman's portrait of her as Madame de Pompadour on all of the 21-piece Limoges tea sets. So these were created by a difficult process of 16 photo silk screens. It came in editions of 75, and each of the 4 colors that were popular in the 18th century in France. And then this is the one that we just acquired in 2023 for IMoDD in Kingston. And then we're on the topic of dinnerware. Here is The Dinner Party, 1974 to 79, created by Judy Chicago. It's now in permanent collection of the Elizabeth A. Sackler Center for Feminist Art at the Brooklyn Museum. And of this topic, there are books and books and books and books on the topic. And basically, it's a massive ceremonial banquet arranged on a triangular table with a total of 39 place settings created from ceramic, porcelain, and textile, each commemorating an important woman from history. Each of the vulvar and butterfly forms are rendered in styles appropriate to the individual women being honored. The names of the 999 other women are inscribed in gold on the white floor below the triangular table. And when I saw this in person, Bill and I saw it in Brooklyn a couple of years ago, I nearly swooned. Beautiful installation in its own room and quite amazing. No matter how many times you see it in a book or in a slide in an art history class or something, it's amazing. So what dishes would you select for breakfast after the happening in 1966? So that artist that you'd be looking at is Roy Lichtenstein, best known as a pop art artist who created amazing paintings. This one's at MoMA, this one's at the Tate. And then he created a few ceramic masterpieces like you're looking at here, which you can see in our Dining Grails exhibition, which is one of our inaugural shows in Kingston right now on view. He learned all his ceramic techniques from fellow artist Hui Ka Kwong. Here's a detail of one of the cups. So it's restaurant ware created by Jackson China. In 1966, they made a limited edition of 800 place settings. This is a copy of the ad in Art in America where it said you could buy it for 50 bucks. You could have the whole limited place setting. And I would have to say that I bought the original ad off of eBay a few years ago, and I paid just about $50 for the ad for Art in America, telling you could pay $50 for the set. So that tells you how times have changed. So it's for the breakfast after the happening. And here's a set that Roy Lichtenstein did that's actually a sculptural version, ceramic sculpture 13 from 1965. And although museums aren't allowed to talk about values, we don't own this one. And it's sold in just a few years ago for $461,000 at Christie's. The one that we have, which I'm going to go back to, this set is a promise gift from Suzanne and John Stevenson. And although you might think I'm just going to talk about ceramics again, but I'm not. I'm going to go to wire scribble sculpture. And this is Portuguese artist David Oliveira, who created this work in 2012. It's a three-dimensional drawing, so it's wire scribble sculpture. It was, well, what can I say about it? You need to come see it in person. It needs to be lit by shadows so you can see that it's three-dimensional work. And he did the pieta and large mammals and all kinds of things. And I actually learned about this sculpture, this dinnerware, which has spilled wine and all kinds of wonderful things in it, from Garth Clark, who posted it on his Facebook page back in 2012. So I'm always thanking Garth Clark for various things, and that would be one of them. And then a couple more things. Just when you're walking through museums, you can just see the most wonderful things. So at the Birmingham Museum of Art, I found this Wedgwood ewer in the shape of a swan. And so some things are stranger than other ones, but I thought it was beautifully formed and unusual. And then there's the lotus ware or Etruscan ewer that Knowles Taylor and Knowles did in East Liverpool, Ohio in the 1890s. And contemporary artists, there's plenty to go around. Book de Vries, the Worcester Memory Vessel Group. And then we're wrapping it up here, but we're looking at a gravy boat here. And so this is a cautionary lesson to you. So the things that look like gravy boats may not be gravy boats. This one is from a diner, so you could pound nails with it. It's real restaurant ware. And then Meissen made some pretty fancy ones that you wouldn't be possibly pounding any nails with. But other things look like gravy boats. So here's a Meissen, a bordelot. So if you don't know what a bordelot, the other word for bordelot is chamber pot. So this is at the Rijksmuseum, which tells you that anything could be shown at the Rijksmuseum. And this is a piece these pieces were employed by women, and you can see kind of graphically how they were employed by women at the time of Jane Austen. So watch out for things that you think look like a gravy boat, but don't really have pouring spouts. But speaking of one more gravy boat, this one's at the museum at Alfred. It's done by Shenango Refractories, and it's a slip cast silicon carbide gravy boat. And I think that's an anomaly and curiosity of dinnerware. So a couple more things. I want to talk about centerpieces, and these fall into the range of rarities and really lovely items. So centerpieces are an asset to any well-set table when appropriate. So one of the best makers of centerpieces would be Kate Mowry. So she has, great skill, and she just has a beautiful aesthetic. This she actually did as an invited artist for our butter, international butter show a couple of years ago. And it's in 2019 called Lamb of God, and it's a butter dish. If you lift that lamb off, it has a place for a stick of butter, and I'm sitting here looking at it, and it must be almost 2 feet long. It's a great ritual ceremonial piece, but it's here in my office. Other centerpieces that were created weren't made out of ceramic or glass or plastic. They were made out of sugar. So these are sugar sculptures from earlier times, well, recent times, but based on earlier sugar sculpture. So, and then looking at a few teapots, I can't go past teapots without talking about the Sanger porcelain teapot created by Peter Sanger I think in the 1980s. And so this one's on view in our Dining Grails exhibition. I purchased it in 1990. He's still making these teapots today, these tea sets. This one's known as the Captain Jean-Luc Picard tea set because it was seen and used on Star Trek: The Next Generation. So it may have been designed in the 1980s, but it was considered futuristic enough that the piece was used on the ultimate futuristic show, Star Trek: The Next Generation. And here we have it. And if Peter Sanger happens to be watching this, Bill and I think that he has the lid on backwards there, or the teapot is backwards. But you can decide and put that in the chat, Peter, if you're on this evening. And then a really outrageous mice and tea service from 1725, followed by a Minton vulture and snake teapot in Maiolica from 1870. Another very interesting piece. And then a couple of Meissen teapots. And I don't think you can beat these kind of teapots. They're just too much fun. And then some are not meant to be fluffy or whimsical, but are created to tell a story. So artist Roberto Lugo creates ceramic jars, teapots, and other sculptural forms based on a deep knowledge of ceramic world history. His recent work tackles, these are a few years old, so it's a little bit not recent, tackles issues of social injustice, politics, race, and poverty through the lens of highly decorated, historically themed ceramic forms. Some of the hybrid forms are his own, such as this teapot with gun parts, an example from his To Disarm series featuring Tupac and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. From the same series, To Disarm, the Angela Davis mugshot from 2019. And then Leopold Foulem, we're going to talk about teapots when they look like teapots, but they're not functional. So Leopold Foulem created striking ceramic images that are not pots about pots, but rather transform the nature of the objects into abstractions. So this one, I've shown it to you so you can see that it's a solid block of ceramic. It is not functional. That spout isn't going to work, and no tea is going to come out of that teapot form, no matter how much you wish the blue willow form to do that. Here's one that was in our current Dining Grails exhibition that was donated in Leopold's memory last year. So Leopold said he's not concerned about the real thing, but about the idea of the thing itself. This is an Amari style teapot, and come see it in Kingston, New York. So I can't talk about Leopold without mentioning in passing Brancusi's cup, created in 1917 to 18. It's made of maple, and you have to go see this one in Paris. By comparison, there's nothing anomalous about Eva Zeisel's cup and saucer designed for Hall China in the 1950s. It's just lovely, but that brings me to this one. So I've kind of been saving the last few best things to last. I meant to tell you that at the beginning. Just stay till the end because I got a few good things to show you in a minute. When it comes to anomalies and curiosities, Merritt Oppenheim's Objet from 1936, now in the Museum of Modern Art, meets all of the criteria for that. She didn't like the label of surrealist artist, but she created this fur-lined teacup, saucer, and spoon after a luncheon at a Paris cafe with Dora Maar and Pablo Picasso. Picasso had noticed her fur-lined polished metal bracelet and joked that anything could be covered with fur. And she said, "Even this cup and saucer." Supposedly, she called out, "Waiter, a little more fur." Soon after, she purchased a white teacup, saucer, and spoon and covered them in the fur of a Chinese gazelle, which she then titled Objet. It met the surrealist definition of a mundane thing presented in unexpected ways that had the power to challenge reason. It was shown in 1936 in Paris and then in New York. It was acquired by the Museum of Modern Art in 1946, and she was the first female artist to enter their permanent collection. While the teacup may suggest manners and civilization, the physical sensation of wet fur filling the mouth suggests otherwise. In 1936, Merritt Oppenheim was 23 years old. Besides not liking being labeled a surrealist artist, along with Man Ray, Max Ernst, Salvador Dali, and René Magritte, she rejected female artists because she said art is androgynous. Much less is known about one that I like almost equally as well. This one is, pardon my French, Ma Gouvernante, My Nurse, created also in 1936 by Merritt Oppenheim. And then Salvador Dali. We do collect flatware in the museum, in case you haven't noticed. But I love this set. We do not own it. It was created in 1957 in gilt silver. However, I don't love it as much as I love these. These are notation knives from Italy from the 16th century. They're etched, engraved, and gilded steel knives with ivory, brass, and silver handles. They're engraved with musical scores, complete with lyrics. And this one is about blessings of the table. And if you Google these online, you'll see that they've actually played the music from the scores that are presented here. And then finally, I've got two more things left for you. Some dinner parties have captivated audiences for 150 years, but they're more about the story than the dishes. So that would include everything about Alice in Wonderland and her memorable tea party. And then it will include also a story. So I've got a sad story, and then I got a happy story, and then I'll let you quit for the evening. So not all dining stories are happy. And I first heard about this one from Jan Longoni, a culinary historian of Ann Arbor of great fame. And she told this story, and I borrowed it, and I think you'll find it interesting. So this was during the siege of Paris. The Germans surrounded Paris in 1870, and they starved the French into submission. And the resulting disastrous dinner involving the beloved zoo creatures. First, the French ate the birds and the squirrels, then 70,000 horses, then dogs, cats, and rats. Then on the 99th day of the siege, on Christmas Day, the elephants that had given rides to the children of Paris, Castor and Pollux, were sacrificed and made into consommé. The menu is in French. I'll let you look at that for a minute. And it doesn't look too bad there. My French isn't very good. But when you translate it into English, this is what the French were dining on from the zoo during the siege of Paris. Okay, the last one isn't as sad as that one, but it's a record-breaking thing. So in this case, you have to guess. You can put your answers in the chat, but I'll tell you the answer if you don't have time to do that. So name the most extravagant dinner party in history, name the year, and name the number of guests. And right there you have a photograph, which should be just kind of like blowing your mind, looking how far those tables look. So it's a famous banquet. So I want you to tell me where it is. So we know that they used 125,000 plates, 55,000 forks, 55,000 spoons, 60,000 knives, 126,000 glasses, and 39,000 bottles of wine, which should give you a guess at where this might be. It involved the largest banquet ever recorded, had 7 miles of tables, and these thousands of bottles of wine. We know how many plates, forks, spoons, and knives were used. It's all recorded in brochures and pamphlets, and we know what dances were performed and what the menu was. We know how many servers there were. There were 3,000 servers, butlers, and cooks. We know the awards that were given. There's another photograph of that, or maybe it's a drawing. I can't really tell. We know that there were 4,000 petit fours consumed. Here's some of the awards. medals. These are bronze medals. 40,000 petit fours were consumed. So my question is, why don't we know who made the dishes? And I don't know. So if you know the answer to this, you can put that in the chat or tell me later. Anyway, the answer to this question is, it was the Banquet of Mayors at the Tuileries Gardens in Paris, September 22nd, 1900, and it was attended by 22,965 mayors. And so we're ending now with something ironic, which is what I like. So this is TEPCO China, made in El Cerrito, California. It's actually a meat platter, and it has that wonderful cowboy flair to it that you can see. But it's actually a meat platter that's illustrating or featuring the 1846 Donner Party. So somebody at TEPCO had a sense of humor by illustrating a meat platter with a Donner Party theme on it. Kind of in summary, all these contemporary artists and designers for industries, some from centuries ago and some up to the present, took standard plates, cups, and saucers, place settings, teapots, and elevated each through their creative genius to the level of an anomaly or curiosity, and maybe even a masterpiece never to be forgotten. Thank you very much for attending this evening.